Yeah, so it's like you're almost grounding yourself again, right? Each time you come back. Because like you said, you do talk about the relations between the East and the West, in particular China and America.
Yeah.
Plus you have your children, you want to make sure they're exposed to both sides.
Correct.
And you also have to keep up to date with what's going on over here as well.
Absolutely.
On the ground.
Absolutely. I think it's important because, unfortunately, what I feel a lot of times in Western media is we have a lot of people that talk about China, that tell stories about China, and the truth is they haven't been to China in many years, and some of them have never been to China. So I find it very difficult for you to have an accurate view of what China is like in 2025 unless you're really here on the ground. And, I just think it's really important for people to understand China moves so fast. If you're gone a year, you're going to miss a lot of things, in your city, in the country. So you have to be, I think, at a minimum coming back once a year. So I view it as vital to my work that I'm coming back and staying connected to China. And I'm only going to see myself coming back more often.
I do want to touch a little bit briefly, though, how you were talking about raising the kids, because we were talking, we have young kids now as well. And it's that balance of raising them that kind of is always, I think, a big topic that we talk about privately is how do we raise them with a healthy balance of both our cultures?
Yeah.
And so we're kind of coming at it from two different sides of the coin, I guess, because you're based in America, we're based in China.
Yeah.
So we grew up in America, so we want to instill some of those values and cultural aspects as well to balance out, their daily intake of Chinese culture here.
Yeah.
And I would imagine for you growing up in the States, it's like very opposite of that.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that like tough though for you on a personal level?
I think it's what's interesting is, we lived, for example, in Vancouver, Canada for a number of years. We lived there for 5 years, and we lived in Richmond, which is a very predominantly Chinese city. So it was actually a really perfect kind of bridge to go back to North America because, for example, in my daughter's kindergarten class, there was 20 children in that class. 19 were from mainland China. My daughter, the 20th, who was half Chinese. So I was like, wow, this is like
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was actually
crazy.
It was actually a little crazy because I was like, wow, there's literally everybody speaking Chinese. All of the parents at pickup, like we're all speaking Chinese to
Were
each
you
other.
worried that's like too many? Like she's not getting enough English?
It was actually a little bit. I was just like, wow, this is great. I love it, but it's also we need a little diversity here too.
We need to have a healthy balance.
We need a healthy balance, and then of course we moved to America, and our kids are now at a academy. And it's amazing because it's kind of the opposite. We're like the one Asian family there. So my wife jokes, she's like, yeah, I'm the token Asian mom at the school. And so, now we're like surrounded by only Caucasian kids. And so it's kind of like a total different environment. So America's totally different from Canada in that sense that I think in America, we're a nation of immigrants. And so there's very much the culture though is that when you come to America, you're American. Like, just welcome to America. You're speaking English. You're American.
Well, that seems to be changing, though.
it does seem to be changing. At least that's what it was for a long time. Whereas in Canada, it's a little bit more focused on the actual, culture. And so I think, Canadians are very proud of being multicultural. So it's like, hey, you're from China. You're Chinese Canadian. Speak Chinese, speak English. You're both. And so there's a little bit more acceptance there. And I think that's a big cultural difference between U.S. and Canada. For our kids growing up in Vegas, for example, every Saturday they go to Chinese school, and that is a tough thing because they're learning from 9 a.m. to 11:30, so it's 2.5 hours every Saturday. And I'll be honest, they hate it. They absolutely hate it.
I went to Chinese school on the weekends. Forced.
We both hated it.
Yeah,
it was the worst.
It's the worst. And so, but what was really nice is that my kids every weekend they're like, why are we learning this, right? Like, this is just no point to learn this. And then, of course, we go to try to take them to a Chinese restaurant. We're like, hey, you can speak Chinese here. But they didn't really get it until we came back to China. And that's when it was a game changer, where it's just like, they're like, hey, no one speaks English here. I'm like, in fairness, they do, but we're in China. You got to speak Chinese. Like, that's why we're back. So let's start speaking Chinese. You want that cup of water? Like, order it in Chinese. And so then they kind of put two and two together. Then they actually started looking at it as something fun, where it's like, hey, I can... it's when you're learning a new language and you're able to, order something for the first time and they're able to understand you. You can kind of be like, hey, I just communicated in Chinese, and so it's a nice experience for them.
There's like a feeling of like actual real world achievement. What's kind of most top of mind for you? Like when you come back and you've been back for a few weeks now.
Yeah.
What kind of stands most top of mind for you in terms of the most like more relevant issues today in terms of what you talk about in your field of work here?
Well, I think the biggest one is going to be the economy, right? I mean, we always hear in the West, for example, we hear several major points. Number one, the economy is crashing in China. Okay. Number two, the demographic is collapsing. Number three, the youth are extremely unhappy, and number four, the real estate market's going to implode. And so, what's really interesting is like these are kind of some, I would say, bullet points. Let's call them 4 bullet points that you'll kind of hear a lot throughout Western media.
Well, I think that's more like the YouTube bubble, though, right? Those talking points.
I think it's a lot in like Wall Street Journal, CNN. I mean, I think it's kind of on your Western media. I mean, for example, we hear that this decline of China's economy, but yet it's still growing at 5%. So that would be equivalent to adding a Thailand-sized economy, this year or every year. And so that's still pretty impressive, where there is still a considerable amount of growth. I think when you start looking at, for example, who is contributing to GDP growth in the world, actually, China and India are really leading that front. So again, most of the growth is coming from Asia. I think when you look at Southeast Asian nations, I mean, there's still a tremendous amount of growth. I mean, you're looking at Europe. I mean, Europe has largely stagnated for a long time. And I think there's always needs to be more perspective, right? So let's bring it back to like my first years in China, 2007, 2008. Now that time, real estate was exploding, right? And even myself here in Shanghai, I bought an apartment in 2009. It was a 2-bedroom apartment out in Jiuting. And it was amazing because I bought an apartment in 2009. I sold it in 2015. And, at nearly about a 400% profit. So, I mean, it was like a ridiculous, great investment for that I was very fortunate to take part of, but it was kind of a great period of time to do that, right? I mean, I don't think you're going to be buying a house in 2025 and expecting any type of appreciation, right?
No.
And so I think what we're looking at is much more of a maturing of China. And I like to relate this story. When I was in Tokyo, I actually went and played a round of golf, and I played a round of golf with 2 expats there. And it was incredible because they had been there for 25 and 30 years collectively. And one of the expats, he said, I just sold my apartment in Tokyo. I actually bought it 20 years ago. And, I've actually just sold it. And remarkably, I sold it for the exact same price that I bought it for.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I didn't pay any capital gains because I made 0 capital gains. I'm like, wow, 20 years? Like, obviously you've lost money because you could have easily taken that money and put it into
the value of that dollar must have changed.
I mean, the value of the dollar's down, or the value of the yen. I mean, but everything. I mean, you take that lump sum of money and you put it in an index fund over 20 years. I mean, you're going to do much better as an investment. So, I'm like, wow, there really isn't a point to buy real estate in Japan then, right? I mean, that's why the interest rates are, they've actually been a negative interest rate for a number of years where they're actually paying you to take out a loan to buy a house, or very close to 0%. So it's essentially free money. So, you can housing is very affordable there. But, again, that is where that society has shifted to a point where housing is just what it is. It's a place to live, right? We're not speculating it. We're not trying to get this crazy appreciation. And so I think that's obviously a market that is super mature. So I think that's what we're seeing in the Chinese market as well, is that, we don't want you flipping houses and trying to make these crazy profits. Housing is for living. That's what we want you to do. So again, I think it's a much more of a maturing. And I think that's what you've seen when I look back over the last 18 years of traveling here. China was just in a total different place than it is right now. And I think in many ways, it's actually positive for China's society.
And why? Why would you say that?
Well, I mean, you know what? I think one of the things that I would say is, think about how much more civilized like the Chinese society is as a whole. And I'd say this, in a respectful way, but back in 2007, right? I mean, people are, hawking on the streets, and I mean, like I remember in Shanghai, they used to have all these signs of like not to honk your horn, because I mean, it's just constantly everyone is honking it all the time. And I mean, even like when you're at the subway station, for example, as soon as the doors open, I mean, it's just a cluster of people getting in and out at the same time. And so there's all these little signs, right? Like you see in Chinese, it's just like, first get out, then get on.
Like societal etiquette.
It's more society etiquette. And I think it's just a maturing of society. I mean, I think China's done a really good job with that. I mean, we see these signs where it'll say like, talk about Wenming, like be more civilized. But everything is just, I think the society has improved. I mean, for example, even smoking in restaurants has declined tremendously. Smoking outside, just the standing on the elevator or the escalator, knowing that the right side you stand and the left side you walk on. This is very, back in the day, all of this didn't exist. So, whatever the government has done, I think it has, improved the society is very different than before. So again, it's this maturing. I remember in 2008, literally going to take the Shanghai driver's license test, and I had a translator with me, and my Chinese wasn't that good, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to take the test in English?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I can't take it in any other language." They're like, "Oh, or if you want, you can pay this guy to take it for you. You can just pay him 100 RMB, and he'll take the test for you." And I'm like, I don't know what that means.
What does that mean?
They're like, "Oh, he'll just take it for you." I'm like, "Well, who is this guy?" He's like, "Oh, he just works here. He'll just take the test for you." And then, so it's like kind of a blatant corruption.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you could just pay this guy 100 RMB and he'll take the test for you. And so I was just, it was such a foreign concept, but that's the kind of stuff what was happening.
Oh, yeah.
And now, in China, it is super hard to get a driver's license.
Yeah, it's very buttoned up now.
It's very buttoned up. So I did end up taking the test back in 2014, and I got my license. And just so everybody knows, it's 100 questions. You got to get 90 or better. So, I studied really hard to take that test, and then I'm taking it in English, and it was tough too because some of the English is a little Chinglishy.
It's tricky in the way they phrase things.
Yeah,
right?
It's not the best English.
Yeah.
So you're trying to
you can't take things literally all the time with the English.
Yeah, so, but then again, you need 90%. So you don't have much room for error there.
Exactly.
So I think I got maybe 93. I'm like, whew, got it, passed, and we're on to the next phase. But again, like that's where I've seen that it's much more structured, and China's just becoming much more organized and it's, everything. Even like parking on the side of the street, right? Everybody used to just park on the sidewalks, park here.
Yeah. Jump the curb.
Jump the curb, park everywhere.
Right.
And again, I'm sure that still happens at times, but it's just, as a whole, it's changed a lot.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that image. Right when you said that, all the images of, no parking space, just hop the curb.
Park
in front of the restaurant.
Yeah, everywhere. You'd be parking on sidewalks and public parks. You're just parking everywhere. And so I remember being like the young foreigner living here. I'm like, man, this is great. Like how much fun, this is like, there's kind of no rules, you can kind of.
The wild east.
The wild east, right? Like, and so there was a great excitement as a foreign here because you're like, man, I've kind of come to this country with no rules. There's like, everyone's just kind of hustling and bustling. But, as a society, it's not good to be parking your cars all over the place, right? We need to have order. We need to have systems. Everything now is just streamlined. Now you go to every parking lot and, they just scan your license plate. You come in, and then when you get out, you scan a QR code, WeChat Pay, boom, and it's just everything's organized. Remember back in the day? You had a parking attendant.
You had to find the guy. He had to run over.
Yeah, so you'd have one guy in the parking lot. You'd have to find him. You'd have to get a little fa piao. Then you'd have to take it and put it in your windshield wiper, right? So this is the old school China.
Wait, how do parking lots work? This is a silly question, but how do parking lots work in the States now? Is it roughly the same?
Such a weird question.
Is it like really automated?
Yeah,
license plate scans and the gate just opens up automatically, kind of thing.
You basically push to get a ticket and it scans your license plate and it's pretty automated.
Okay, yeah. So same.
Well, that was the same when we were still live there. You push a thing and you get a ticket.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
But when you pay, I remember you still had to pay like a physical person.
They don't pay a physical person. You're paying a machine.
Like a payment center before you get into the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, not too common to see. I think the parking attendants. It's pretty much been automated too in the U.S. as well. Yeah, but I feel there's a lot of people in the U.S. that our cost of living just continues to grow higher and higher. It is just amazing how much things cost. Compared to 2 years ago, compared to 5 years ago, and just that expense is really.
It's a little hard for me to comprehend even.
Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't been back to the States since before COVID, since 2019. I was like one of the last flights back, right? So it's been a while since I've been back to the States.
Yeah.
And even then when I went back, I was like, oh yeah, it's much more pricey than what I remember, but it's all right. It's America. You gotta work in tax, you gotta work in tip and and all that stuff. But now from a more of a distant perspective, from what I'm understanding, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, what I'm talking to other people who just came back, the prices are a bit out of hand. It seems a bit
you couldn't comprehend it, especially if you are. You're going to have such a culture shock since the last time it was 2019, because just in the last 18 months alone, the prices have gone up so much.
Well, I've seen those headlines too, but since you live there, like you're feeling this directly, like daily.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the cost of everything. I mean, our health insurance went up this past year. I mean, so just from perspective, I mean, we're paying $1,500 a month for health coverage. A month for health coverage for the 5 of us. Yeah, 15. It was $1,295 last year, and now it's $1,535.
Wow.
So that's just for health insurance alone. So that's one part.
Okay.
I mean,
But does it typically go up each year?
No, it was for the first couple of years. It was always at that $1,295 rate or something like that. So, but I mean, your health care is a lot. The real estate has gone up a lot. Pricing. I think your cost of your
daily living.
Your daily living. Your food costs.
Yeah, you hear about groceries a lot, right? You hear about the eggs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like how widespread and real is that on a daily basis? Like, are eggs just actually out of control?
The nice thing is you do have a range. So, for example, I mean, if you really want to get, the cheapest eggs possible, I would say you're probably going to pay around 50 cents an egg. So you're looking at about $6 for a dozen eggs. Would be kind of your cheapest option. And then, of course, if you want the free range, organic, whole food market eggs, you're paying $1 an egg. So you're literally paying $12 a dozen. So you can kind of find needs that fit your budget, but it's getting to the point where, for example, it's almost getting it's so expensive to even eat at home. A lot of times, you would make the decision, let's go to the grocery store and let's not eat out at restaurants. Let's save some money, eat at home. But you go buy steaks at, Sam's Club or Costco or your local supermarket. It's not cheap, for beef and, for these proteins. And, by the time you add in all of these, I need some paprika and I need all these little condiments and all this, it ends up being quite an expensive meal. So I think that's kind of like when we get back, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we actually have like a Michelin star Cantonese restaurant in a shopping mall right close to where we're staying. And so we order actually like dim sum and also dinner from them probably like 2 or 3 times a week because it's Michelin star. But I mean, we're all in for a family of 4. I think our bill last night was like 340 kwai, and that was like, family of 5. But it was like we ordered like 7 dishes.
It was like indulgent.
It was great. I mean, it was fantastic. And so we're like, man, this is like unbelievable food. The quality's great. You get it delivered at your house in 20 minutes. I mean, it's just incredible. But that meal in the U.S. would be $200 easily. It'd be a really expensive, meal. So even your Chinese, like hot pot, like we love to go to hot pot. I mean, hot pot in the U.S. is extremely expensive. There's a Haidilao in San Diego, for example.
It's like luxury, right? It's not.
It's definitely, yeah. I mean, family of 5, you're going to drop $250, $300. To go to Haidilao.
At Haidilao in the U.S.
At Haidilao in the U.S.
$200, $300 U.S.
U.S.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you're going to drop at least $200.
That's like saying you're going to drop $200 at McDonald's.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
which you have done before.
Guilty as charged.
Wow,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really, and I think that's where people are really starting to see, they're starting to kind of see these videos coming from China, and I think they're starting to see like, man, look at there's been a lot more videos I think circulating online that's been very interesting of foreigners going to China for the first time. I mean, we've seen, I think China has actually has starting to appeal very, very much to especially a younger demographic in the United States, because China has done a wonderful job. I wouldn't say it's even China that's done the job, but China has benefited from a lot of social media exposure in the last 12 months specifically that have portrayed the country in a very positive way, or at least made a lot more people more curious about China.
I was going to say, I have seen an influx of both influencers and just common people just uploading videos of their trips to China. And I mean, I'll watch them, here and there, just out of curiosity, to see what they're saying. And in general, it's always positive. I haven't seen any negative.
Yeah.
And they definitely have no affiliation to China. These are just regular people just coming in and reacting.
Well, yeah, but that's like one of the talking points, and I'd be interested because you're so you've been in the YouTube space, Cyrus. You see a lot of those critics just basically saying that all these YouTubers are like paid by the government somehow to spread propaganda. Somehow, obviously that narrative is going to come along with it by a certain group of people,
for sure.
But is this so interesting to see all these people kind of actually this like kind of flood of online like vlogs and videos and just content Like, what do you make of that when you see it? Because you've been one of the earlier ones to be doing this, right?
Yeah.
You've been in this game for a long time. How does it feel to you when you see like this whole wave coming now?
Well, it feels fantastic to me because, like you said, we've been in the YouTube game for about 5 years now. And so we've been uploading content and really trying to share China's story. And it really just started out as kind of a personal, not really knowing where it would take me or what it would actually become. But it became a huge passion project that turned into a full career and, and amazing opportunities that have led me around the world. But the main thing is always just trying to share these experiences. So, this year specifically, actually, I'm going to say these last 12 months, the growth of that, I think it's great. And I think it's amazing because I love to see more people discover China and really experience it for what it is. Unfortunately, we live in a world right now where if you say anything positive about China, you are labeled as a communist propagandist. And that is unfortunately the reality of the world we live in. I took my kids to play badminton yesterday. I posted a video of them playing badminton on Twitter, and people were like, that's propaganda for the government. And it's like, my God, like I can't even show my kids playing badminton in China. I actually talked about how, they met a couple of local Chinese.
You cannot show them having fun here. No,
you can't. And so
they cannot be having fun in China.
Yeah, and that's
no fun allowed.
No fun allowed, right? And so we have this stereotype in the West that China is this draconian place. It's a dystopian society. The economy is collapsing. Basically the whole system is going to fall apart at any time. But the simple reality is that anybody who comes and sets foot on China for even a couple hours, you realize, okay, something is missing here. So, Western media is not telling me the full story because everything I've been told in the West, it just is completely different. And then all of a sudden you start meeting Chinese people on the street. You start seeing how the society is functioning, and you realize that China is very different. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that China doesn't have its problems, it doesn't have its challenges. Of course it does, like every other country. But it is so different than what our perception is in the West. And so for me, I've actually just been very uplifted and very happy to see this because, again, I kind of started the show saying that I'm this official ambassador between the U.S. and China. I mean, I definitely believe, and this has kind of been the cornerstone of our YouTube channel, is when the U.S. and China work together, the entire world wins.
Yeah, and you've been saying that since day one, man. I love it.
Yeah, that's my motto. I mean, that's kind of what drives me every day, and and obviously I've got skin in the game, right? My wife is Chinese. Our kids are half Chinese. I want them to be proud of their heritage.
You want this to work out. You want the world to work out. You want China and America to work out.
Yeah. Well, like we all three of us sitting at the table today have skin in the game on this, right? And I think that's one of the main reasons why we are so passionate about. I think that's really what drives me. Like, whenever we talk about this type of stuff, it's really for no other reason than honestly, we have skin in the game.
Yeah,
and the skin in the game is like real world consequences of our future and our kids' future, and it becomes especially frustrating when you see like all those false narratives.
Yeah,
but talking about that, like, do you see those narratives that we were just talking about in terms of China being this draconian place, everything that comes with that angle? Do you see that narrative starting to crumble now with all these more and more exposure?
I do. I think what's really, the answer to that is absolutely. And I think what's been very powerful is the decision, we go back a year ago when China's government started to say, we're going to start opening up the country visa-free travel for a number of countries around the world. So for example, you look at the EU, essentially every country in the EU is now visa-free to China. So you can come for 2 weeks, visa-free. And that's a huge barrier to entry because it is really mafan or very troublesome to get the China visa and go through that process. So all of a sudden, if you have an EU passport, now you can come and travel. That was a big barrier to entry for many people. Now it's like, oh, well, now I can just book a flight and just show up and
we've noticed a lot more foreign travelers here in Shanghai.
Oh yeah,
in the recent months.
Oh, it's been a. I mean, we look at the government data that's come out. I mean, it's without a doubt. I mean, there's a lot of foreign tourists now coming to China. Australia, New Zealand, visa free now. I mean, Australia's done an amazing 180-degree pivot from their last prime minister, Scott Morrison, who was very, very anti-China, huge China hawk. And now, I mean, Albanese, I mean, he's met with Xi Jinping.
He was just here, yeah.
He was just here. I think he's met 3 times in the last 6 months.
But he's caught a lot of flack back in Australia for even coming here, I think.
It's going to take some time. Right?
You know, it's always interesting because you went from like, it's a 180-degree pivot, right? You've gone from like, we're breaking up with China to now like, let's build a stronger relationship. So, people are going to take time, but you look at the Australian economy and how reliant that is on the Chinese market. I mean, a lot of Australians have been very rich and very prosperous because of a fruitful relationship with China. So I'm very much about trade relationships, trade agreements, building, working together. And so I'm all about working together and finding ways on how we can do business together. That's a big part of what I believe in. But I think to answer the question, has that started to crumble? It has, because again, you didn't have like dedicated YouTubers like myself saying like, hey guys, I'm going to take you to China. No, you had random Joe Smith from the UK who just said, hey, I'm a travel vlogger. I've been traveling the UK and Europe, but guess what? China just opened up their borders. I'm going to go take a look.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow, my first time to China.
Like people with like existing already like pretty big channels. Like that weren't doing any Chinese content. So it's not like they're known for this. They had a trusted following already because they were just making content everywhere in the world. Yeah. And then they just happened to come to China and be like, hey, it's kind of like I Show Speed coming here.
I was going to say, I like to say it's a three-pronged attack to make this wall crumble down a bit more. So the first one would be the TikTok refugee thing, right? So all of a sudden, we already mentioned Americans and Chinese directly correspond with each other. Yeah. Right? And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wow, I'm seeing Chinese content and vice versa, right? So that's one. Second one was, I think I Show Speed, when he came here and did the live feed for so many episodes, and the amount of viewers and the amount of attention that got. And all of a sudden, everyone, like a common narrative was, oh, everything is just normal there. They're pretty cool. Everyone's just kind of cool. And I didn't really see too much negativity. And then, as a matter of fact, they actually made a couple of people like heroes. From the duck guy or whatever. The goose,
like Chinese people that participated in his videos.
And then so that's the second one. And then the third one is what you just mentioned, is the opening up of the borders. Yeah. And that just naturally allowed a lot of regular content creators or non-content creators, just families coming to visit and see for themselves, and leaving posts and all through social media, of course, saying, hey, this is actually kind of cool here. Whoa, oh, my mind was blown. Hey, this is not kind of what I heard. Things like that. So that combination, that three-pronged attack in the last year, is just, I see the difference as well. Yeah. Just as a viewer. Yeah. When I see regular content, when I see comments, you see the battle now. You see the debate between people protecting and also attacking. Yeah. As opposed to before, it was always a one-sided voice. Yeah. It was always depending on what channel you watched. Right. But I'm noticing now, you see like that, like the
there
debate.
Is a little more pushback.
Yeah, there's pushback now.
A little more balance to it.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's amazing is I want to kind of take it from the YouTube perspective, because YouTube is a views game, right? The more views that you earn, the more money that you can make. And so think about this from that perspective. Okay, I'm a travel vlogger, and I'm going to take you guys to England. I'll take you guys to Spain. We'll go around Europe. We'll do all these things. Great. Those can be popular. But there's always kind of China is always an interesting country, right? Like there's so many people around the world that are so interested in China, whether that's good or bad. Like China is.
Well, there's like this mystique, there's this legend around it.
It is. So I think for travel vloggers, it's like, hey, I've kind of traveled all through Europe, but now all of a sudden I'm visa-free to China, and I know that China's pretty popular. People are searching for that. People are always curious, at least. So I'm going to go ahead and take my travel channel there. So why did they go to China? Well, they went there because they knew they're going to get views. Yeah. Because it just is a popular topic.
Well, it's also politically relevant.
Yeah. I mean, China, let's be honest, like China's always in our news every single day. Yeah. You can find an article about China. Let's say Korea or Japan, not that often you're going to find an article. If there's maybe one or two a month, China would have one every single day. Yeah. So it's just much more relevant, and it makes sense because it's a huge, this the factory for the world, largest trading partner for 120 countries. I mean, so China's going to be a lot more relevant. So again, what's amazing though is you see them just sharing their real things, like, man, this is such a, I can't use any credit cards here. I can't figure out how to do these payment systems, right? Like they're showing their real experiences in China, and it's just raw and authentic. But again, I mean, that's what was encouraging for I Show Speed, is because he brings a total new dynamic. His viewership, I would say, it's got to be 85% probably under the age of 21. Yeah. So, I mean, he's bringing in a much, much younger generation who would never be really interested in anything about China, but it's like, hey, It's I Show Speed on the Great Wall of China. Huh, you know what? I'll watch that because I like speed and it sounds cool, man. Like he's in China. Let's see what he's doing. He's doing backflips off the wall. So I mean, honestly, Speed's content isn't anything really amazing. It's just him. You know, again, he's a personality. So, but what's exciting is that young people can get a new impression of China and just kind of, you know, automatically they're not going to be able to be brainwashed by this media's image that like, this is what China's really like. And it's like, well, no, dude, I just watched my favorite vlogger. Like he's having an amazing time there and just showing it the way it is.
Well, I think the power of that type of messaging cannot be underestimated, especially from people like us who are a little bit older.
Yeah.
How important it is for that generation and how powerful it is for that generation.
100%.
Because, like you said, that influence as an influencer, I Show Speed is he's the number one like live feeder in the world,
right?
In terms of viewership and fan base.
I know that now. But honestly, I had no idea who he was until he came here.
Yeah.
And then I started looking into him and I'm like, oh wow, like he's huge.
Yeah,
he's
I had no idea who he was. I'm just not, you know,
I actually didn't know
40
that.
something years old.
I wasn't too familiar. I've seen him before, but similar thing. I mean, because he's just not in our. He's not the kind of creators that we'd be watching. We're not in that demographic. No, we're not under the age of 21. You know, I mean, he's definitely going to have that kind of probably 10 to 21 year range where he would dominate. You know, and those young kids that are online and very, very impressionable age where he's just showing you. But he's going all over the world. You know, what I mean, and he's at a level now where he could literally go to any country and just film, and people are going to find it interesting, and it gives him a lot of opportunity because he can just say, hey, I don't know anything about Greece, but guess what? Why don't we go there and shoot some videos and go explore?
Well, that's literally what he does.
Yeah.
He doesn't look into anything. He just shows up and reacts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then his team around him sets up things, you know, sets up scenarios and stories, but he's just reacting to it. And he knows it's a setup, but then he'll react to it. But it's still genuine. A lot of times when he's reacting to new experiences, testing new food or whatever, he's like, wow, what the fuck is this? You know, he's like literally, it's genuine. Yeah. And so the fans know that he's actually being genuine. So you'll see his reactions to, let's say, for example, when the China live stream, he had some foods. He's like, this is way too fucking spicy. Don't give me that shit. You know, just going off, which could be taken off as maybe a negative response. But no, he's just reacting to food.
He's very spontaneous in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's why I think,
which is good.
That's why I think he was like the worst thing for like the anti-China people, right?
Yeah.
Because like even you, Cyrus, like because this is what you talk about. They can probably attach that label to you being like, oh, maybe you're some propagandist because this is what you consistently talk about anyway, right? But like for him, this young kid coming in, it's really hard to attach that label on him with like, any real legitimacy. You know what I mean? Because it's just kind of too in the moment and not what he does at all. And so he and people like him like really bust through that narrative because you look like a clown if you try to tell people try to convince
he's
people
a CCTV shill
like he's a propagandist. You know what I mean? Then you expose yourself by saying that almost.
Agreed. And I mean, and unfortunately, you know, I related to this as, you know, I had got an email from a guy in Florida. He's an elderly gentleman. He shared with me his age and you know where he was in Florida, and he said, "Look, Cyrus, I'm Special Forces, retired in the U.S. military for a long time. You need to understand that you're wrong on China, and that China is the biggest threat to the world, and we need to cut off all ties with China." And he goes, first thing we need to do is we need to expel all 300,000 Chinese students in America. We should not have a single Chinese student, coming to the United States. And so I don't typically get fan mail like that from that, but I said, I'll engage, I just I'm like, hey, thanks for the email, appreciate your time. Let me just kind of throw some facts at you. For example, I'm very pro immigration into the United States. I think that immigration as a whole has been very beneficial to our country. If you look at in the last 30, 40 years, how many Chinese students have come to the United States and how much the United States has benefited specifically from Chinese students, this has been amazing. I mean, let's just take, for example, the AI race, okay? The majority of people leading the AI development in the United States is Chinese people. right? So
they're all Chinese names, right?
Yeah,
like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is you've got like the battle between AI is Chinese in America versus Chinese in China.
Yeah,
right. Like
it's like that meme of like that math like contest. And
Yes.
it's like the American team were all like American Chinese.
Yeah. It's exactly. It's like the American team finally beat Team China. Congratulations, like Zhang Li, Liu. It's just it's like all the Chinese last names. But I said, that's amazing that you would have this type of attitude that you want to expel 300,000 Chinese students from our universities. There's so many ways we can go with this. Number one, international students, they make up a large part of the tuitions that pay for these universities, right? I mean, the other thing is that, again, we have a lot of these students, come to study in America. They remain in America. They become naturalized U.S. citizens. They have children. They build lives. They build careers. I mean, this is all beneficial to our economy. This is all beneficial to our university system. Look at this China initiative, that they started a few years ago where the government actually started going after these Chinese professors. They had the China initiative go on for several years. They never found a single case of any professor that had any substantial links back to China, and basically they
Really? Weren't there a few that have been accused?
A lot of them were accused. A lot of them were accused. A lot of them were brought to trial. But the problem is that once you accuse somebody and then you put them through the legal process and then they go on trial for 18 months, their entire they had to get a lawyer to defend themselves.
Yeah.
They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to defend themselves. They've lost their position at their university.
Yeah, the consequences are still real and lasting. They lose their jobs.
Yeah, and then
lose all funding for their research.
They lose the funding for the research, and then it's like, at the end of 2 years, sorry, we didn't find anything. Off you go, and it's like, you've just ruined my life. Like you've literally ruined 30 years of work here, and that's why we've seen a tremendous amount of Chinese professors leave the United States and come back to China. And so I said, this is a loss for America when you're going down this road. And so this gentleman in Florida, he said, you know what, Cyrus? This is how it works. All 300,000 students, before they leave, they get briefed by the communist government, before they go. And then when they come back, they have to give a detailed report of everything they learn. I said, that's not true. I said, that's just completely fabrication. And he's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, I know a lot because I probably know about 50 students in my career. Like my first career in China, I was a golf professional. So my most of my client base was young kids, ages from 5 up to 18. Many of them went on to study in the United States. Many of them played golf in the United States. So I can personally vouch that I know probably about 50 kids from China that have studied in the United States. Not a single one of them have been questioned by the Chinese government, nor did they have to go and report back to the Chinese government.
Debrief.
Yeah, it's like
I've heard that too. Though I literally saw a U.S. politician on TV saying that all Chinese students are CCP spies.
Yeah,
the word for word. That's what he said. All Chinese students are
and that's
and
just
I know
terrible.
this isn't representative of everyone's way of thinking, but like that's one of the extreme groups that do feel that way.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is you have this gentleman who would be, above the age of 60. He's going to have his beliefs. It's very hard to win an argument against those guys because they're stuck in their ways, right? They're very stuck. But that's why I've kind of given up on that generation. And I just say, you know what? You believe what you want to believe, buddy. Like I've laid out the facts for you. I've laid out why having Chinese students in America is a net positive for the United States. And the evidence is very clear for that. And again, I'm pro-immigration as well. And Mike, even the side effects of that, right? Let's just say that the United States goes through and from now on, all Chinese students are banned. Well, do you think that students from Japan and Korea are going to want to come? It has ripple down effects, right? Because other Asian countries are going to be like, geez, the U.S. is now banning Chinese students. What happens? Hey, I know you're Japanese, but what happens if somebody mistakens you?
You're Chinese. What are you doing here?
People can't tell the difference between, different kind of Asians. What Asian are you? It's very, very difficult. So I think there's these ripple down effects that people, they're reacting on these emotions. And so anyways, I really want people to just understand that. Again, it kind of goes back to my core mission of trying to improve this U.S.-China relationship and more understanding. But again, when you're on the ground for just a couple of hours at least, and you're walking around these cities and you're seeing things, it becomes very apparent that there's a much different side of China that you're not really going to see in the media, and that honestly, even if you don't like China, you should probably come just so that you can kind of understand it a little bit more and just at least see it.
Yeah,
and just in China because China will be a part of our future in the world. That's just the simple reality, right? So, there's no denying that. China's going to be a superpower. It's going to be a manufacturer. It's going to be a big game player in many world politics. So I want more people to understand that. But I'm more encouraged because the future is the youth. And I do see more youth being more curious, being more open, and that's where I find a lot of encouragement, and that's why I love to see the last 12 months. Visas are opening up, more people here on the ground. I love to see that the young people are watching this content on social media and seeing a different side. And even more ordinary people, like you said, that aren't content creators. I saw a guy on Instagram, he posted a video, and it went viral, and it was really funny because he doesn't have any kind of content. He's just kind of like a normal dude on Instagram. And then all of a sudden he has this one video that gets millions of views. But it was, it was like, hey guys, I'm wondering, what do we spend our taxes on in the United States? Like, I'm 8:30 p.m. at a local park here in China. Like, just look at this. Like, we've got there's a lake here. There's like bumper boats in the lake with like lights on them. There's people riding these bikes. There's like, look at the park. It's like 8:30 at night. It's packed full of people. Like, yeah, grandmas walking their kids down here, like balloons everywhere. Like this is amazing. Like
public park we're talking about.
Yeah, like public park. Yeah. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. He's like, why don't we have anything like this in America? This is just like our public parks at nighttime are like crime zones.
Yeah, like downtown Chicago, downtown New York.
Yeah, you're not gonna see that, right? So I mean, he was just like, he makes this video and he's just and why it did so well is he had a great hook. You know, it's like, what do we spend our tax dollars on in America? I'm in China. Take a look at this park.
It's like an honest question.
Yeah, no, but it resonates. I was actually literally thinking about this the other day. I was sitting in the back of a cab and this idea popped in my mind. Was like, I just feel like part of, I think, one of the biggest problems in the U.S. with the way people are feeling, and this really has nothing even to do with China, you really don't see your tax dollars working for you. Like, you don't really see it. Like, there's no real, like, direct thing where you're like, aha, okay, yeah, here we go. You just feel like, where are they going, right? They're going to wars.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, the problem there is you're looking at, in the United States, just look to the Middle East. That's where you can see our tax dollars at use, right? All those missiles and bombs and everything.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, no, you're right. I mean, that is a big problem that I think that a lot of Americans are having and are challenging. And so, you know, we can take the conversation away from China and just like look at the United States. I think that's where a lot of this younger generation are very frustrated because I'm not seeing my government provide for me and make things better. Right, I'm not seeing, a society that's improving. I see that the cost of, what do most Americans really want? I mean, they need to have a cost of living that's affordable. They want to have a better quality of life. They want to be able to have a good job. I mean, this is kind of universal stuff that's really everywhere. I mean, that's kind of any society, you want to have those things. And so I think that's where a lot of frustration is right now with the United States and why a lot of people aren't happy with the government and the way that it's going. So yeah, I think it's really important that, we start, and this is why I think it's important to travel, because I think when you start looking at China and you start looking at, say, the basic things in life, like I was talking to my taxi driver today and he's just like, yeah, your salary in America is so much higher. I'm like, it is higher, but did you know our cost of living is a lot higher? He's like, how much do things cost? I'm like, well, I probably pay around 1,000 RMB a month for my phone bill. He's like, what? 1,000 RMBs? Like, what are you doing on your cell phone? I'm like, using the internet, just using it as a phone. Like that's about what it costs. But it costs about 1,000 RMB a month.
It does.
And he's like, that's insane. And I'm like, yeah. And I probably pay around another 700-800 a month for internet in my home. What? And I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, yeah. So we're talking just internet, like my phone and internet in the home. I'm probably around 2,200 RMB a month. And he's like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, so yes, my salary in America is higher because my costs are much higher. And so I think when you look at it from like the basic things in China are very affordable. I mean, you can take the metro for literally, less than $1, right? I mean, it's very affordable to take the metro
50 cents to $1.
50 cents to $1 to take the metro, your internet, because internet is now really becoming kind of a basic thing that you need in your life.
Basic utilities.
It's kind of like food, water, internet. Like you need to have internet, right? Yeah. Especially in China. So I mean, so the government has to make that affordable. It's got to make a 5G network that works and it's compatible, so everybody can access that.
Yeah, it's insane. I recently did just out of curiosity, like 2 months ago, I just searched Verizon and T-Mobile and just checking out some prices, right? And yeah, I was shocked to see that it was like over $100 US a month just to have anything not even comparable to what I have now.
Like a basic data plan.
Not even comparable. Like right now I'm paying like 30, not even $30 US, right? Just under $30 US, but I have like 80 gigs of data. So I was like, damn, that's a lot. That's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, I think the biggest, like, going back to what you were saying, is like, I think the biggest grapple I'm seeing in real time, at least what I think I'm observing of a lot of U.S. citizens, is this quality of life versus what I have to pay to be here.
Yeah.
The idea that I'm in the richest, and most wealthy and most developed country in the world, right? And it's just like kind of just grappling in real time this dissonance that they're trying to wrestle with. And I don't even think consciously they're even thinking that way. I think it's just that it's the way I'm seeing it. It's the way I'm describing it. I don't think they're consciously thinking in those terms, but I think is what's happening. That's like the forces that bring a lot of conflict to a lot of people internally in terms of how they're feeling, even their mental state, just day to day, living there and working so hard and still like struggling, and most people still living paycheck to paycheck for like a lot of basic needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to bring up a really interesting YouTube video that I'm going to say went live about 2 weeks ago. I think it was from CNBC, and it was like how much it costs to live there. And it was like this African-American lady that had moved to Hangzhou, I believe it was.
Yeah,
so,
I saw that.
Lightyear or something like that.
Yeah, I think
her name was Lightyear.
Yeah.
Or
So,
like that.
but you know, I watched that, and that video did very well on YouTube because but you start, all you need to do is start reading these comment sections to start hearing from real Americans who obviously clicked on that because they're very interested to see like what it costs to live there. But you know, this young lady, I think she lived for 10 years in New York City. Yeah. I forgot the job that she had, but I'm going to say she was earning around $60,000 a year. And I mean, $60,000 a year in New York City is nothing. I mean, you're going to very much struggle to get by making $60,000. You're going to struggle to get by making $100,000 in New York City. I mean, the cost of living is just super expensive. So she's like, you know, I'm working hard. I'm earning the best that I can. I'm basically breaking even at best, probably going into a little debt. And, you know, I'm just like, where do I get ahead of myself? Like, how can I get ahead in life, right? Do that for 10 years. I'm basically at the same point where I started, you know, like, great.
You're running on a treadmill. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I'm running on a treadmill. So great. I had fun. Like, I'm sure she had a great time living in New York, you know, at times, you know, some great memories for over 10 years. But now all of a sudden you've eaten 10 years off your life and you're like, well, how am I going to get ahead? Long story short, she moves to Hangzhou. She's like, okay, this is what I pay for rent. You know, my rent's $450 a month, and then she's showing the apartment.
A two-bedroom apartment. Or something,
you know, it's like two-bedroom apartment. It's beautiful. It's like, wow, this is nice. Like $450 a month. Like that's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, when I was in New York City, I had to share an apartment, right? Because I can't afford to live by myself. I have to have roommates to supplement the rent. So that's where I realized I'm like, it's not about how much you earn. It's about how much you're saving. Again, my big advice, if there's anybody that's young that's watching this podcast, and I say is challenge yourself and go live abroad, but you know, put yourself in a position where you can actually get ahead in your life because you're able to save money, and that alone. I mean, even if you can, I had a good friend of mine that you know is from Canada. He came here as a golf professional as well, and he did 10 years in China. And because of the money he was saving, he was able to go back to Canada, go to a place of Whistler, which is a very, very expensive real estate market, but he was able to, you know, buy a house there. So he was able to put the down payment there and actually put a substantial amount of money down in order to get a house. That would have been impossible if he stayed in Canada. He's just like, that wouldn't have been any chance. And then because of when he did that, I think he bought that around 2019 or 2018. So, I mean, that house would have probably doubled, if not tripled in value at this point. So again, like he personally is in a much better financial position because of that 10 years in China that allowed him to have the capital to buy a house, to then allow him to be able to appreciate it by 3 times. So, you know, when he sells that house, he's going to have a great chunk of money, and it's going to be a direct result of him coming to China.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, and that's a way that he was able to leverage that and get ahead.
Yeah, and you're also not living under the gun every month of having to pay your rent for a roof over your head, right? I mean, that's a crushing kind of pressure.
For sure.
And for people everywhere, like even here in China, right? It's not just U.S.
And just add in real quick, I mean, we were just talking about Shanghai, for example, which is one of the top 2 to 3 most expensive cities in China, right? Shenzhen, Beijing, Shanghai, I would say like the top 3. But you see a lot of people, at least I'm seeing a lot of content from people that don't live in these cities, that live in the 2nd and 3rd tier cities, and are totally happy and just actually saving even more. Even Hangzhou, which is a 2nd tier city, but it's still pretty up there, right?
Yeah.
It's a still expensive city, but cheaper than Shanghai.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're still able to find cheaper apartment. Now, let's say you go like Jiling or I don't know, some Harbin or some other like 2nd tier city that's a little bit smaller. yeah, you're going to find even more cheaper apartment housing, living standards, but still have city life and all that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. So I still think I'm very bullish on China for the future, and I still think, especially if you're young, I would definitely encourage anybody young to get outside and travel. It's the best thing you could possibly do.
I think from looking at the larger dynamic forces pulling out a little bit, I think what's tough for probably a lot of young people in China now is that, like you said, back in the day, right, 2009, 2010, that whole period of time, things were double-digit growth here, right? Opportunity and making money and just your quality of life and how fast things were improving here was just at light speed, and it was remarkable. That's all slowed down, as we talked about, and what you're saying is the country's matured. Of course, those things are going to slow down. And so I think, this younger generation is kind of like a little bit rebounding from that in terms of like, oh, that's what they kind of grew up with.
Yeah.
So expectations were a little bit set for them in that aspect. And then now it's not quite like that. It's not anything near that, right?
Correct.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And so it's this new reality that they kind of have to deal with now in terms of those adjusting those expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that could be very tough as well, psychologically.
Definitely.
What do you? We were talking about real quick. We were talking about 5G earlier. Do you guys know anything about 6G? Like the 6G developments going on? Isn't that like the new frontier?
I think so.
And
yeah, absolutely.
China's supposed to be at the forefront of that.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that China. I mean, I think we're at a point now where there was a time several years ago where China's this copycat nation, right? China can't invent. China just copycats other countries. They can't invent anything, and there's certainly a time where China was very good at copying other things, and they weren't really seen as an innovator. And I think that's where when I was down in Guangzhou earlier this week, interviewed a German expat that had lived there for 20 years in Guangzhou. He had a lot of interesting stories to tell, but he said, back 20 years ago, it was all OEM, basically just manufacturing stuff for other companies. And so basically, we're good at making stuff for you. Yeah. And I think what has shifted is there's been this big initiative of let's become an innovator ourselves. So, for example, we're going to make your cell phones and computers, but we're also going to make our own, and we're going to have different features and different things. And we've seen that how China has tackled the electric vehicle industry. How they've said, look, okay, we're going to invite Tesla in, get you involved in the ecosystem here, but we're also going to be pushing the boundaries and seeing what we can invent here. And there's an interesting story last year where BYD was actually going to open a factory in Mexico and then decided not to because they were actually scared that being too close to the United States, the U.S. might try to steal some technology. And so you've kind of seen this complete 180-degree reversal in the span of a few years where, for a long time, American was always worried about Chinese stealing their tech. And now it's like the Chinese are innovating. They're worried about Americans stealing their tech.
Isn't Ford like dissecting Chinese EV cars? I heard them talking about, I think it was Ford.
Yeah, the CEO of Ford.
Yeah, they would buy the Chinese EV cars and they're trying to reverse engineer.
Yeah, there was a recent video that came out of him doing an interview. And he actually repeated this previously a long time ago. But in this recent one, I forgot what platform it was on. But yeah, he was talking about how he brings his top team executives to China every year.
Yeah.
And they test all the cars and then they ship back the top 20 or 15 or 20 to break it down and really understand. And he was basically saying, is you're ridiculous if you think that China's copying. You're ridiculous to think if China's behind. They are way in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just really straightforward with it.
And he also said, he just had such positive comments because he said, I personally drive this SUV back in the U.S.
Oh, the SU7, the Xiaomi.
The Xiaomi, the Xiaomi SU7. So he's like, I drive that and I've been driving it for 6 months. I absolutely love it. And so it's very
humble. It's for him to say that.
Well, not only that, it's
crazy.
It's great that he speaks the truth, but it also you can't ask for a better endorsement than, okay, the Ford CEO literally went to the trouble of importing our car across the ocean to Detroit, and that's what he personally drives around the streets of Detroit.
And he literally said, I'm breaking it down to understand the technology behind it, which is what? It's equivalent to stealing as well in a sense.
Yeah.
But it's almost too crazy to believe that the Ford CEO is driving a Xiaomi SU7 around in America. It's just so... That's so crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy.
But he can say that because they don't sell Xiaomi in the States, so it's not as, right.
It is, but imagine pulling up to somewhere and it's like, hey man, nice nice ride you got. And he's like, thank you. He's like, hey, what do you do? I was like, I'm the CEO of Ford. You know? I mean, what a funny situation that could be. But I mean, at the end of the day, I do love his honesty, and it's just, hey, kind of game recognized game, you know, right? It's just
to him.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, hey, we want to make the best car. You know, and I think that's where I would like to see this relationship go in the future. For example, I'd love to see BYD enter into the United States market, but let's do it with a joint venture, right? Let's do it with a joint venture with the GM or with the Ford, and just say, look, very similar to how U.S. companies come into China, right? We do JVs, 51-49%. Why doesn't GM? We're going to do a partnership with BYD. We're going to build a factory here in Michigan. We'll employ all Americans here. And, you know, BYD, you can get 49%. We'll keep 51%. It'll be a new joint venture, new company. And then we'll sell it at a price point that doesn't destroy the U.S. market. Because that's the big issue, is that we ban them because, you know, if they came in at that price point of, what is it, $14,000 for, you know, an entry-level BYD, you know, that would crush the domestic market in the United States.
Well, isn't that why they set in the EU like a absolute lowest price, like a price protection there?
Yeah.
You can't go below a certain
Which
price.
is so
to sell
weird if you
EVs.
really think about it.
It is weird, but I do.
Well, you'd be angry as a consumer
Yeah.
because like you're artificially making me pay more to protect kind of the industry, I guess.
Yeah.
But from an individual level, it's like, oh, why am I paying more now? You know?
But
I get it, though.
That is essentially the whole tariff game, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
That's where we're at. But I mean, that's what I meant is that. But even at that inflated level, it'll still be a bargain, and it'll still be a benefit to U.S. consumers. So it's kind of it's a triple win, right? Because America can win by this new joint venture, BYD gets access to the U.S. market, and then U.S. consumers get access to the world's best EV and the technology coming from China. So again, that's kind of where I would like to see the U.S.-China relationship go, is how do we do more deals like that? I don't want to have all these cheap EVs come in and completely gut the auto industry, because I mean, you know, we do need it, but it's also recognizing the same thing. Look at Volkswagen. Volkswagen said Xiaomi is so great with these cars and what they're doing. You know, we're going. I'm sorry, not Xiaomi. Xiaopeng. That we're going to invest 700 million euros to get a 10%. You know, we're going to acquire 10% of the company so that we can get access to that technology and use that in future Volkswagen cars. And we realize China's the future. So why don't we buy a part of it? Yeah. Right? We can take 700 million euros and buy 10% of your company, and then we're going to benefit because you're going up. So I think, you know, you have one of two options. I mean, we can pretend that, you know, that China's not developing and that China's not the future, and then we can just say, hey, we're ahead and just lie to ourselves. Or we can say, look, China's inventing some pretty cool stuff. We better let's partner with them.
Yeah.
Let's benefit ourselves. Let's do it together.
I just kind of think about if the day were to come where brands like BYD and whatever were able to sell in America. The technology is there. The aesthetic is there. People like the cars. The people abroad who have seen these cars are like, whoa, why can't I get that car, right? So if only that were to happen, that would just be, to me, you already had this renaissance of culture being shared from China out to the West.
Right. Yeah.
And that would just be like that wave. That last wave, I feel like that, you know, to really push everything over. But let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
You see a lot of stuff happening now where things that are derived from China, like cultural elements, films, games.
You know, I think 2025 has been a really great year for China because there's been a lot of soft power wins.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to the very beginning with, you know, Justin, you mentioned the TikTok refugees, you know, being able to, you know, see, and basically, you know, there's this ban of TikTok that's going to come. Okay, well, then they went to Xiaohongshu, Little Red Note, to really see what's happening in China. That was a big soft power win for China. You saw the other thing was really DeepSeek coming out. And you know, I mean, it was amazing because you saw this incredible, you know, there was this amazing video clip of Sam Altman in OpenAI. And so he's speaking at an event, and I believe it's an Indian entrepreneur. He says, you know, Sam, what would you give for advice if there's another company that wants to develop and you know, try to emulate what you guys are doing? You know, what kind of advice would you give if we want to enter into this market? And he's just very arrogantly, he's just like, no advice. Like, you got no chance. Like, we're so far ahead. Like.
Yeah, good luck.
I mean,
I
but
remember that
it was
clip,
just so arrogant and so over the top. Like, it was, and the Indian entrepreneur was just very humble. He just kind of smiled and just kind of like, you know, it kind of took it. But I just thought, it was like, man, this guy is so cocky and arrogant.
Was this before Deepseek?
This was
Before.
This was before Deepseek. This is before
Okay,
Deepseek.
okay.
But he basically said, "He's like, no one can touch us. No one's doing what we're doing. It's over." Like,
And that was also when the like MSM outlets, mainstream media, would be saying that China is about 1 to 2 years behind America.
Yeah,
in
that
terms
timeline
of
kept
AI.
changing. It was like a few years behind to like a few months behind, but it was always behind.
Yeah, it was always behind,
Yeah.
but it was a very behind, like a 1 to 2 years. So
Yeah.
people were like, don't worry. That was around
Like
that
they're
time.
still
Yeah,
1 or
yeah,
2 years
yeah.
behind
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
And then Deepseek comes out, and it's like, yeah, we built Deepseek on a budget of $5-6 million. We've been able to, completely do. It's actually testing at a level that's higher than your OpenAI, and so all of a sudden, this is what I want people to really understand. All of the anti-China propaganda actually hurts Western countries more than it does China. And that is something that I think more Western audiences really need to understand, because what happens is, and we've seen that play out exactly with DeepSeek, all of a sudden, we're told every day in the media that China's collapsing, China has no future, China can't innovate, they're a copycat nation, and then all of a sudden, they make something like DeepSeek. And then everybody in the West is like, wait, what happened? I thought they were behind.
Yeah.
I thought they're not doing good.
what happened?
How could they do that? So the anti-China propaganda doesn't hurt China, because we're living in China. We're here on the ground. We're seeing it firsthand.
Exactly. In a way, it helps China because it kind of provides cover for them.
Exactly.
Like, don't look over here. Don't look at what we're doing. Don't pay attention over here.
Absolutely. So I think that's a big thing I want people to understand, is that, you can lie to yourself and you can say that China's collapsing, and that, I've seen some ridiculous YouTube videos out there where it's just like,
Oh yeah,
the
there was like that
communists-
whole military coup thing that was narrative that came out a while ago. It was
there's
like,
a military coup that's going to happen. I saw. It just gets more and more hilarious. There's a really interesting graph that I have. I'm going to be using this in an upcoming video, but it talks about the population crisis let's see, the population. So here it is, the state of global fertility, and so it's just like China's population crisis is in America. Well, actually, the only place in the world that's growing is Africa. Right? Actually, the fertility rates amongst Europe, North America, South America, Australia, Asia are basically all very little. No one's growing.
Well, yeah. Well, the demographic crisis is a real thing. Like I'm not saying it's not, but it's a global thing, and a lot of Asian countries are suffering from that as well as the Western countries. So yeah, that's a global discussion.
That's why I even said earlier in the podcast, I said, even if you don't like China, you should probably come and just at least experience it, just to kind of see what's kind of going on, and just to try to understand.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I had a guy that was really hounding me on Twitter, and it was really interesting because he was just so adamant that he knows all of this stuff, and I could immediately, you can kind of start to, I was listening to what he was saying, and then I just said, hey, I've just got one simple question for you. I'm just need to ask you one question. I pretty much know the answer to this. Have you ever been to China? Well, Cyrus, I've never been physically to China, but, and I'm like, all right, bud, you're done. Like you have no skin in the game. You have your time's up. I was like, you have no relevance to this conversation, because if you want to portray yourself as a China expert and that you know all of this stuff about China, but yet you've never stepped foot in the country, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
That you're going to lecture people about China?
Well, I always equate it to, like, imagine there's this random Chinese guy,
Yeah.
and he's on Chinese social media making all this content about America.
Yeah.
And he's this random dude in the middle of China who's never, ever been to America.
Right.
How much legitimacy would you give them?
Right.
And of course, they would say none whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, buddy, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So like a lot of these things, because it just seems so obvious, and it seems silly that you even have to point these things out. But sometimes I think they're so blinded in their way of thinking that you kind of do have to point these things out, in terms of just taking their exact situation in terms of what they're doing and flip it around to someone Chinese doing the exact same thing.
Right.
And then it just becomes so obvious, like, oh, that's silly.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm more encouraged today than I have been at any other point in this YouTube journey and what I've been doing, making videos about China, because I actually see the world is starting to change, and I'm starting to see the youth is starting to change. I think a lot more people are much more open to China. And I do have another thing I want to say is that, living in Las Vegas, we tend to have we're kind of surrounded by a very conservative group. We go to church there. We have, our community, I would say, would probably be much more leaning to the Republican side. So you would probably classify many of them as maybe anti-China. But what's amazing, though, is that not a single person in our community has ever expressed anything but interest towards China because of us knowing us. My wife and
Yeah.
I. And I think that's been an amazing thing because, I've had so many parents come up to me at our school and be like, "Hey man, I saw your YouTube channel." And so you're kind of like, where's this going? Where does that go? Is it a positive or a negative? Because I'll be honest, I speak positively on China, and I have a different perspective than what you're going to hear.
Does anyone ever get confrontational with you?
So that's what I was going to finish. It was just like, "Hey man, I saw your YouTube channel," and then
you're
there's
praising yourself.
No, and then I'm always just kind of like, and they're like, "Man, that's a lot of good work you do, man. I really learned a lot. Appreciate that." So I can honestly say I've never had a situation where somebody's come up to me and said anything negative about a YouTube channel or confronted me or anything negative about that. And I think a lot of it is people are very humbled in the sense it's like, "Hey man, I don't know anything about China." So, like you were on the ground there for 10 years. You go back every summer with your family. You speak Chinese. Like you're in the game. You're doing this every single day. So like, I'll definitely listen to you,
Yeah. Can I be honest with you? And I think this is more for our fans over here that may not have listened to you yet. I think the biggest difference and why you may not have gotten this negativity towards you in person or whatnot is because the content that you bring is it's not based off of like overt opinions.
Yeah.
Or you're not really trying to, like make people angry.
Yeah.
You're coming in from an honest and positive place,
Right.
Presenting information on a topic that may be trending or not,
Yeah.
and just sharing the information that you have gathered
Correct.
and done your research and sharing and putting it out there and saying, look, this is the information. Do your own deep research. You always tell people, you don't listen to me. This is what I've done.
Yeah.
And I think it's just you're coming from a very genuine place,
Yeah.
as opposed to a lot of people who also are pro-China or the opposite, pro-America, that come in very divisively, very strong, guns a-blazing,
Right.
and
Pew pew pew.
no, seriously, and that will cause that emotional response to be much more extreme.
Yeah.
And so that would dictate the person to being like, what the hell's wrong with you? But you come across as genuine. So I think, and you're not trying to divide people. You're just presenting information, and I think that's good.
Well, I think a lot has to do with the person's predisposition in the first place. So even with someone like Cyrus, because you're consistently talking about China, and I think if you were just to look at it very one-dimensionally,
Right.
your content is consistently very positive on China.
Yeah.
Or bullish might be a better word.
Bullish would be,
bullish on China. And so if a person's predisposition is to be very negative on China, they're going to be infuriated with his content, right? because it's counter to everything that they believe in. And this is one of the issues, I think, in real life when you actually do run up with people or you're having online conversations with people who are diametrically opposed to your point of view, is that we're simply believing and working off of different facts.
Yeah.
Right? Like that guy, that special forces guy, whatever you're talking about,
Yeah.
he is believing in a totally different set of facts than you are.
Right.
And he believes in his facts just as strongly as you believe in your facts, right? And so there's really not much of a conversation to be had because you're basing it off of vastly different basic assumptions to begin with.
Right.
So it's almost impossible to ever find common ground because it's just the facts you believe in are just so wildly different.
But you can't don't use that word fact because a fact is a fact.
No, but I'm
not
saying
your fact and his fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is, to them, it's their fact, and to Cyrus, it's his fact. So it's like what you believe in to be true, right?
I would say that's more belief because I would say I wouldn't say fact because like a lot of the things that he had said is like, for example, the simple insight of 300,000 students, get briefed by the Chinese government, and 300,000 students have to give a report. That's not a fact.
I'm not saying it's a fact, but I'm saying it's his fact.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because he believes in it as a fact.
Yeah, and that's the problem is why sometimes if that's what you believe, then you're not going to change. And it's that older generation that's harder. But I have an interesting story as well. There's actually there was a tweet that went viral. There's actually a Chinese lady. I think her name is Lily Tang Williams. I believe she's running for maybe congresswoman in the state of New Hampshire. So she was born in China, I believe in the 60s, and I believe she immigrated to the U.S. in something like 1980s or something like that. So she's been in the U.S. for a long time. And so what's very interesting is her Twitter is everything is Mao's China. So she has this video that went viral, and she's like cooking some vegetables, and she's like, hey, I grew up during Mao's China, and socialism is evil. China, did you know that when I was little, I had to have rations to get meat, and I couldn't get meat. And he's like, that's what those socialists, that's what those Democrats want you to that's what they want to bring China's government here. And so it's this fear-mongering clip, and of course it goes very viral with the Republican base. And I looked at it from a very interesting perspective, because I don't want to discredit her experience. I mean, she was born in China. She grew up during the Chairman Mao years. She would have grown up, yeah, no doubt. Like at that time, you didn't have meat to eat, right? Yeah, you definitely needed food ration, ration coupons to get your meals. But there's a very interesting thing as well, is that you also left in the 80s and you haven't been back. So yes, you speak Chinese. You are born in China, but you have not been in the game for 45 years. And so I replied to her, I just said, it's very important that you recognize your past, that you understand your history, and I would never take that away from you. And not say that, like, look, I understand what it's like to be poor and being under Chairman Mao's China. This is not Chairman Mao's China. And if you can't recognize that the country has changed and that personal freedoms for Chinese people have exploded over the last 30 years, right? I didn't get a response to her on Twitter, but a lot of people are like, yeah, China's not much different than Chairman Mao. I'm like, really? I'm like, really? Like Chairman, it's not different than Chairman Mao's time?
Yeah, well, it's kind of silly, because it's just like time and history go on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things change. It'd be the equivalent of someone growing up in Jim Crow America.
Yeah.
And then leaving Jim Crow America at that time, let's say like during the Civil Rights Movement.
Right.
And then never having gone back yet. And then still talking about America as Jim Crow's America.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, no, that's been the past. Like that isn't to
past.
say it wasn't true back then.
For sure. For sure.
And it isn't to say there aren't problems now. Of course there are. But like anyone with like a rational mind knows that it's just a vastly different culture and city and society now than back when the Jim Crow laws were.
And their point was, is it's still the same China because you can't vote for your president. And I said, you have to get beyond the simple fact of that, okay, in America we get to vote for president. That doesn't mean we're better. It doesn't mean that like, okay, I casted a vote last November. Did my quality of life improve? I mean, is it substantially different? I mean, I to be honest, I mean, in my whole community in Las Vegas, everyone was pretty upset with the fact that we had Trump and Kamala, and they were like, this is, every year is the same crap, a decision between bad and bad. Every 4 years, it's elect and regret. I mean, I didn't really see a lot of people enthusiastically going to the voting box, and the numbers reflected that. I mean, there's still a large portion of Americans that don't vote. So, I mean, we kind of live in this bubble where democracy is everything, and voting for your president means everything. Yeah, it's a form of government. Is it the best form of government? No, I'm not convinced it is. That's not me saying that I'm anti-democratic, nor am I saying that the communist way or Chinese, socialism with Chinese characteristics or any kind of government. I think what my main message as well is that the world is too unique and too diverse for only one form of government to exist. And somehow we think that if Chinese people could vote for their president, everybody's problems would be solved and everything would be so much better. And I don't think it would. I really don't think it would. And so, again, and that's actually not up for me to decide, because I'm not a Chinese citizen. This isn't my country. I'm a guest in this country. I'll always be a guest in this country. So I'm kind of like, let China figure out what China needs to do, And from the American perspective, my other issue is that if we really think that China's government is bad and it's going to fail, then why don't we just let them fail? Right? Like,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, just let them be then.
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem is that it's not failing and that it's continuing to grow and it's continuing to.
That's how you know when someone's doing something right, is when their enemies get angry.
Yeah.
And the more they talk, the more they're chirping,
yeah,
the more you know they're doing something right.
And I mean, that's why if you watch my videos, I really love to use facts. And that's not a belief, a fact, but like an actual fact. And I mean, there's a great survey earlier this year, the Alliance of Democracies, which is a think tank based in Denmark, went out and did a survey amongst 110,000 people amongst 110 countries around the world. That's a very substantial survey.
Big.
110 individual countries, 110,000 people. They found that across this very, very wide spectrum, 110 countries, 79% of people around the world have a higher impression of China than America right now. And so again, like I'll use that in a video and it's like, well, why are you being anti-America? I'm like, I'm actually being very pro-America because I'm concerned. I mean, when you have that large, I mean, we're not talking 51-49. Right, it's not like, I mean, and even that would be a concern, right? That you'd have a majority.
It was that close, yeah.
You know, but it's like it's not even close. We're talking 79%. That's a massive gap. And you look at what's happened in the United States, and you look at our political system, and you look at the wars that we're contributing to. There's many reasons that this is happening. This is not one factor. This is multitude of reasons. We look at why the BRICS organization is gaining steam. Why are many countries wanting to evade the U.S. dollar for trade? You know, these are all of these stories are happening around the world, and that's why you have to get outside of that American bubble. And hence why I say the anti-China propaganda really hurts American citizens more than it does Chinese citizens, because Chinese citizens are here. They're living their life. They're doing their thing, and they're trying to move forward the best way that they can. Yes, China has economic challenges. I don't think the United States is without its economic challenges right now. I mean, we're moving towards a recession. I mean, prices are sky high. I mean, there's many Americans that are, you know, can't afford housing, can't afford this. You know, safety levels are not anywhere where they need to be. So, I mean, every country's got to figure out what they've got to do to improve their society.
Yeah. What about from the cultural aspect? Because we touched a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I guess people would call it soft power.
Yeah.
The kind of soft power rise with China and America, we see it with different brands, coffee brands. We see it with Labubu.
Yeah.
Right? We saw it with Neza, right?
Yeah.
Even the Xiaohongsu Deepseek thing. I actually have I kept a list over the last year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because I just want to be able to remember these things. So for
sure.
me, the first thing that this was first on my radar was when Wukong.
Yeah.
Wukong
The video
first,
game.
Yeah, the video game. Wukong first came out, and that was such a huge hit.
It was huge.
Yeah, worldwide.
Record breaking.
Yeah, record breaking for a Chinese video game developer, based on a Chinese myth, right? So it's like full cultural, like Chinese things. And then Red Note, the Xiaohongsu thing, Deepseek. This might not qualify, but I kind of just threw it in there because at the time I was all happy about Zhang Weili and the UFC winning, and then Neza 2, you know, how huge of a hit. I Show Speed coming, and then the latest one, Labubu.
Yeah.
And so it's just like really within like what
And
the
even
last
more
year
latest
and
was
a half?
Luck and Coffee.
Luck and Coffee
Luck and
now.
Opening in New York and causing a huge stir.
So it's just kind of this like chain reaction, like back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
Like what is, in your mind, Cyrus, what does this show to you? What is it saying?
You know, for me,
Does this mean anything?
well, I think it means a lot because, you know, I'm going to tell you an interesting story. I was invited to attend this conference in San Francisco earlier this year. This was hosted by the Asia Society, and it was called The Future of U.S.-China Relations. And so I flew to San Francisco, I attended the event, and all of a sudden I realized that, you know, there wasn't going to be a very fruitful event. And why do I say that? Well, basically we have about 60 people in the room. It's a closed door event, so no cameras. I kind of wanted to go there, maybe interview some people, kind of, potentially, make some content there, kind of talk about what I was learning. We had a lot of very experienced people in the room, people that were former Wall Street Journal reporters in China, former ambassadors, former, Stephen Roach, very famous economist, gave the opening keynote speech. So, I mean, we had kind of a powerhouse room of people that were very much invested in the U.S.-China relationship. And so we broke it down in these roundtable discussions, and we're all kind of chatting about the future of U.S.-China. And then I quickly realized that as people are going around the room, it almost started to be this little bit of a contest. People are like, well, my name is Jim, and, I lived in China for 20 years. I speak a fluent level of Chinese. And then the next guy's like, well, my name is Peter. I lived in China for 25 years. And then it's like, well, my name is John, and I lived in China for 30 years, and I speak Chinese. And
It's like a dick measuring
It's like, I was
contest.
born in China.
and I finally got really frustrated. I'm like, hey, can we all just come to the conclusion that pretty much everybody in the room speaks Chinese? I think like we've all been in expats or experts or whatever you want to call us. Like, we all speak Chinese. We don't need to like kind of brag about that anymore, right? We can do this in Chinese if you want as well. But I'm like, what is our point here, right? I mean, it almost kind of felt like this bragging contest where people are just like, let's all get in a room and talk about U.S.-China relations. So at the time, this was right when the TikTok refugees, started to emerge. I mean, this was the trending story. This was like literally the absolute peak of this story. And so I just said, hey, we want to talk about U.S.-China relations. Like, how about this amazing breakthrough with Xiaohongsu, all of the TikTok ban, millions of Americans going through, and these older experts were just like, yeah, big deal. Like that's not really a big story. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Because that's not their world,
that's
right?
not that's not their world. And so what happened was and this is also another interesting thing. So people naturally started to ask me, it's like, Cyrus, what is your background? What do you do? I'm like, I run a geopolitics YouTube channel, big focus on China. It's like, so what do you do though?
What do you do?
Like, what do you do? I'm like, I run a YouTube channel. You're a YouTuber and you got invited to this conference?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, yeah. I was like, yeah, we have, close to 900,000 subs. We have a lot of, I give a lot of speeches around the world on topics and stuff like that.
How many people listen to you?
and I mean, I'm very humble. I never want to brag or anything, but I'm just kind of like, hey, I'm there's a reason why I got invited, and I'm just saying I do have a YouTube channel, and people do want to listen to what I say, and so I'm trying to come here to listen and learn, and but everyone's like, well, do you have a degree in journalism? And I said, you know what, I don't. And so then I kind of know where the story's going. So then I kind of really stir the pot because I'm like, no, you know what I actually do? I have a degree in hospitality, and believe it or not, I'm actually a golf professional. And they're like, you're a what? Yeah, I'm a Class A PGA
Mind
pro.
blown even more now.
and they're like, so you're a golfer? I'm like, I am. Actually, my first job in China, I used to teach golf in China for a number of years. They're like, then how did you become a YouTuber? I'm like, I just one day decided to make YouTube videos. And they're like, so you got invited to, they're like, I can't understand, like, you're a golfer, but you, like, how did you get to be a YouTuber?
Yeah, how did you get to be in the same room as me?
Yeah, basically.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of these academic circles is that they get too high on themselves and they take themselves too seriously.
And this is why, like, and I just said, this is the problem. I said, and I was talking to this one person that was, I think he was like the head of Wall Street Journal for China from 1990 to 1997. And I'm like, hey, that's an amazing job. Like from 1990 to 97, like head of Wall Street Journal China, like that's the job, man. Like, because guess what? Back in that day,
that was peak.
That was peak, right? Yeah. Back in those days, people are reading newspapers, right? And that's just, you probably just started to get online, right? I don't know when Wall Street Journal Online was founded, probably like 95, 96. I mean, you're probably just starting to publish things.
Literally the peak, right? Right before it starts dropping.
You're right at the peak, right? So, I mean, you would have been paid a lot of money. You'd have been on a massive expat contract. You would have been an amazing job. I'm like, kudos. Like, that's phenomenal. Like, you were at the right place at the right time. But I said, this is what's been very interesting in social media. Social media has broken down the barriers. I don't need a journalism degree. I need a camera and I need a voice. And, whether, and again, the thing is like, I'm putting out content and people enjoy that. And I'm like a citizen journalist. So no, I don't have any experience in journalism other than the fact I've been doing YouTube for 5 years and I've been able to figure out how to make decent YouTube videos. And so I'm continuing to learn my craft, but yes, that's why I'm here at the table. But that's where it was kind of an interesting one where I was just like, there wasn't really anything. I kind of felt at the end of the conference, it was a one-day conference, I was like, honestly, this was a complete waste of time. Like if they ever call me to come back, I won't go because I'm much better to just make my YouTube videos or actually go interview. So the one thing that I did benefit from that is I did meet Stephen Roach, who was an amazing economist who has amazing theory. So I got to interview him. And that was great because I briefly shook his hand and then I sent him an email and said, hey, Professor Roach, met you at the conference. Can I do an interview with you? And he's like, oh yeah, Cyrus, no problem. So that's probably led me to that. So I will say I'm thankful for that. But it was much more advantageous for me to speak to someone like a Stephen Roach who has a lot of experience in China, but is also very open about that and just and it was actually a little unfortunate because he had some ideas. He had some unique ideas about how to improve the U.S.-China relationship. And then even some of the people at my table are like, this guy's too old. Like this guy doesn't know anything. I'm like, hey, at least he's given the keynote speech, and this guy's like probably the most experienced guy in the room. I mean, Stephen Roach is super popular, very, very smart economist. I don't know. I actually really enjoyed what he had to speak. But again, I think it's just, so going back, I kind of went off tangent there, but going back to the soft power things, I mean, Labubu, we might say that, okay, it's a little plush doll, big deal. But I think all of these things, this is how American power became so, I always say this, like back in the day in Shanghai, right? Like Starbucks was the thing to drink, right? I mean, I remember back in 2008, 2007, 8, there was no other coffee shop other than Starbucks. Yeah. And it was 35 renminbi for a coffee. I mean, that was a lot of money, but I mean, you held it with the label out. Right? I mean, you held it with the label out, and I mean, it was a pride thing to be like, man, I'm treating myself to a $35 latte from Starbucks. This is the thing to do. I mean, you wanted to wear Nike shoes. You wanted to have an Apple iPhone. That's how America culture around the world. And I would say not just in China. I mean, I have friends in Europe, Australia. I mean, American culture is everywhere, right? So that's how American had built up. So I think with this new wave of, first Deepseek, I think was a big one, the Xiaohongshu explosion. We had the movies, you had the video, the Wukong is the game, the video game, the Labubu is amazing. But even like, a hot pot brand, Haidi Lao. That's very popular in the United States, where people are like, wow, this Chinese hot pot thing is amazing,
good.
It's great. But I mean, I know we have we've been in China this month, but Labubu, for example, a Pop Mart was opening in Las Vegas. People were camping out 3 days. I mean, this is summertime in Vegas. We're talking 40 degrees centigrade outside. They're bringing tents, sleeping in tents to be the first in line for when that Pop Mart store opens to buy a Labubu. So I mean, I think it's just another little soft power win. So you might shrug off the Labubu, big deal, some plush from China, who cares? But then you start adding all these little things together. It's kind of like when you're trying to improve yourself, like that thing. Let's try to get 1% better every day.
Yeah.
Right. If I can just kind of sharpen the tools a little bit, and then all of a sudden,
Atomic Habits.
Right? You remember that chapter in Atomic Habits where they talked about the British cycling team, and it was amazing because it's like we're gonna improve the tire by a little much. We're gonna try to improve every little thing of the bike by 1%, and then all of a sudden, the next Olympics, they come out and they smash all these world records.
The compounding effects.
It was the compounding effects. Yeah. So I think what you're seeing is in China is these compounding effects that, yes, we've got, the Labubu is one of 100 different effects, and then when you add them up together, it's like, wow, there's a shift happening in society. So my main thing, I guess, kind of a central theme I've talked about today is I'm much more bullish about the youth around the world being open to China, traveling to China, and seeing what China's like. And that also is a result of, I think, a lot of people are waking up to the fact that our governments lie to us, right? I don't know a single U.S. citizen that would come out and say, I trust the United States government. I don't know a single U.S. citizen that would say, I think the U.S. government puts my interest at their heart. And so, we know that the U.S. government is not working for the people. So I think when they're starting to realize that, hey, they're not telling the truth on a lot of stuff in the United States, maybe they're not telling the truth on China. And becomes very apparent as soon as you land here on the ground and you experience it.
Yeah, I think it's basically everything is affecting each other, right?
Yeah.
And so between the influx of positive comments and content about China, crossed over with the export of culture and products and films and all that stuff out, you have this, they all react with each other.
Right.
It's just this dynamic force that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think, for example, in terms of product, you have the old trope of bad quality, copycat, and that's totally getting squashed, right? You have a lot of quality, you have a lot of new innovations, and you're seeing the reactions of the people leaving the comments, starting to defend a lot of things coming from China. So it's really interesting. And like you said, this rising tide, this rising force is happening, and we're in the middle of it right now. We're nowhere near its apex. But I think it is that rising tide.
Yeah.
And it is exciting to be part of this time and period in China because, like you said, we were here during the golden age of the economic rise.
Yes.
Right? I feel like this is sort of like a part two.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, the cultural rise.
Yeah, maybe you can call it the cultural rise.
Yeah.
Because economically speaking, as someone who lives here and works here, it's not in the best shape.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to be very blunt about it because my industry has been affected. I'm in the commercial industry, advertising industry.
Yeah.
And when the economy is not going well, guess who gets hit pretty hard?
Yeah.
The advertising industry,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Because the brands don't want to spend as much,
right?
And et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, we're hit kind of hard right now, and you can tell that it's not improving yet.
Right.
Now, certain sectors are getting better, but certain sectors are still doing bad. I don't know how long this is going to go for. I'm not an economist. Maybe you can, if you have any information that you've heard, maybe you can share a little bit. But personally, I haven't felt it yet.
Yeah.
In terms of that change, if anything, the majority of the people I talk to are saying it's worse than last year.
Yeah.
But people are still positive in the sense that we just got to push through.
Yeah.
Because it's this they just got to figure this one little thing out, and then we're going to push through, and then we're going to come back up. There's still like that positive energy behind it for some people, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think there's again a very similar sentiment to what you just described as this 坚持, right? We've got to really like persist. We've got to get through this. And I think there's one thing with the Chinese culture is I think as a society, you know, the Chinese have been through a lot over the years, right? I mean, they know one thing is to persevere.
Yeah.
And I think it's just really being able to, you know, persevere through those times of economic downturn. And I think, you know, it's no different. I remember in 2008 and 2009, I was very blessed to be in China at that time. But I remember my friends back home in the United States when that real estate collapse happened, you know, and there was a lot of jobs lost. I mean, there was a lot of, you know, the economic downturn was very severe. So, I mean, I think that, you know, nothing is going to last forever, but it is just very much maturing. And so I think when we're looking at what's going to be moving the future of our world, I mean, we know that AI is going to be a big part of that. And I think any business that can do that, I mean, I was talking to this German entrepreneur down in Guangzhou, and he was very big on the drone industry. And he had actually said there's been so much of this drone used in the farming industry, and that's completely transformed this farming industry, you know, in China. And he had also seen there was this new Guangzhou Biotech Island. It's the Guangzhou International Biotech Island, which is this little island in Guangzhou that they have 500 companies there. They have autonomous taxis and autonomous cars, and they've got all of these cool biotech companies that are doing all kinds of new research and stuff. And it's actually been growing, you know, really fast over the last couple of years. And so we had toured that area and taken a look. I'm like, wow, this is really impressive. You know, this is really impressive. All of these buildings and companies and, you know, things moving forward. Like I said, you know, you're not going to be speculating on real estate right now, trying to flip houses and things like that.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting because you also have to think about the way China's society, I mean, the people of the country are, and you kind of hinted at it in terms of the perseverance and the being able to tough things out. But also just I guess the way people are set up in a societal way where it's very group based, you know, family based.
Very, very much.
You know, so when the younger generation, they have some troubles, I mean, you have family help, and it's very open to that, which kind of helps. I'm not saying that's the right way to be, but I'm saying at least it kind of softens the landing a little bit when they crash.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting statistic. This is from the BBC, and this is and you know, if you actually watch a lot of my videos, I like to use these Western sources. You know, I'll tend to use the BBCs or CNNs, and so actually the BBC shared this, but the source is actually from HSBC. So it's China millennials lead home ownership. So you're looking at the percentage of millennials who own their home. 70% in China. U.S. would be 35%, and UK 31%, Mexico 45%. So I mean, you kind of you hit on that a lot though, because of that family dynamic, and I think that's one of the aspects from living in China that I think is so interesting. Is, you know, I gave a TED talk a couple years ago where, you know, they had asked me to, you know, what are some of like the top 5 lessons you've learned from your years in China? So I was thinking about, all right, let me come up with 5 lessons I've learned. Learned a lot, but let me just kind of with the top 5. But one of them was family and the importance of family, and it was a very interesting thing because in China, you know, you're always taught, how you just described it perfectly. You have this family as your kind of your backup plan, and it's also that, you know, you're a unit, and I think that's how. And actually, if you actually really know about Chinese culture, you know, for example, in these small villages, you know, there's kind of like a local government that works in the small village. You know, so if we're talking like really small villages, you know, you would actually have the villagers come together, and they would actually like democratically elect like a chief, and so that chief would be responsible for the benefit of the entire village. And so there's this, you know, if one of the people in the village had cancer and they needed treatment, you know, the village would come together and raise money so that he could go to the hospital and get that treatment. You know, you're not going to be able to fall because you've got the village there to support you. So this is very, you know, kind of going back thousands of years in Chinese history on how that worked. And now fast forward to today, where again you have your family dynamic, where it's not uncommon where, you know, a husband and wife want to come together, the 2 grandparents come together, they all put money together, build a house because they, you know, or fund a house, that way they can start a new family and grandkids and all of that. So this is a very different dynamic than we know in the United States, where very much it's, you know, you're 18 years old, you're an adult, off you go.
Yeah.
And
there's the front door.
There's the front door. And I like to tell this story because I find it really very fascinating. So when I moved to China in 2007, I, you know, would only come back to the U.S. once a year. And, you know, my grandmother, on my father's side, she was getting older. And I said, you know what? Every year I come back, I need to go to Iowa to go visit my grandma, because I don't know how much longer she's going to be there. So what was interesting is that she has 20 grandkids, and I was the only one that came to visit her every year. And it was kind of that interesting dynamic, because I guarantee if I lived in Florida, I probably wouldn't have gone back once a year, because you're just
you don't think about it.
You don't think about it. You're in the same state, and you're like, oh, grandma's getting old. You should probably go visit her. Like, yeah, like.
Yeah, maybe next year or something.
Maybe next year. Like, yeah, I'm just kind of busy. You're like, oh yeah, maybe we'll look in the fall or something like that. But because I lived in China and I only had one trip a year, I just said, you know what I'll do? I'm just going to prioritize it. Before I go back to my family in Florida, I'm just going to fly into Minnesota, rent a car, and I'm going to drive down to Iowa. I'm going to go see my grandma. And so I said, that was such a great time, because I did it 3 years in a row, and then she passed. So I only did it for 3 years before she passed away. But I had some great memories with her. And it was really great. For example, we'd go back, and her favorite thing was to watch the cooking channel. So I would literally just sit there and we'd just chat and on the couch, and we'd watch the Cooking Network for like 8 hours straight.
Sounds nice.
It was great. But it was just, I'd tell her stories about China. She'd tell me stories about the farm. She'd tell me stories about my dad. We would order some food. It was just it was a great time. Like, I have these amazing memories with my grandma. So when she actually passed, I didn't go back to the funeral. But that's when all my cousins went. Because they're like, well, we haven't seen grandma. I'm like, well, you guys went for the funeral.
Kind of too late.
I went to go see her. So I'm not going to go to the funeral, because I've already paid my respects, and I've already saw that. But that I learned from China. That I specifically learned that because I was very inspired by, at the time, I remember the high-speed rail back in 07, 08 was not developed. So I remember my colleagues in Shanghai would be like, yeah, I'm going back to Sichuan province. I'm taking like a 45-hour train. And I'm like, 45-hour train? Like, what? And they're like, yeah, I haven't been home in 51 weeks. I'm going to go back. It's going to take me 2 days to get there. I'll have 3 days on the ground, then 2 days to get back to Shanghai. That's my holiday for the year. And I'm like, that's wild, man. But it's family's everything. Yeah. So, I think there's always lessons to learn. And I think that's the biggest thing from us being expats in China, from us traveling the world. And, again, a lot of times people ask me a very common question in the U.S. would be, Cyrus, what's China like? And I always try to simplify it, because I'm like, China's a lot more normal than you probably think. It's no different. Like, people are recording a podcast on a random, Saturday afternoon. People are going to, I went and I grabbed food at the Italian restaurant just outside the place here. All these Chinese couples there on a Saturday afternoon. There's this lovely couple right next to me. I was listening to their conversation, like, hey, you want to go to a movie tonight? What should we do? Should we go over to our friend's house? I haven't seen them in a while. It'd be fun to go over there. So, it's like Chinese people are doing the same thing that we're doing. Right? Chinese people want the same thing that we want, right? If they had kids, they're wanting them to go to a good school and hopefully grow up and get a good job and live a better life. So I think that's where I really want to focus more on this people-to-people diplomacy, because I think if we, our governments will never see eye to eye, right? The United States is going to be the U.S., China's going to be China. I'm not here to tell China how to run their government. But what I want to see more people learning to work together and interacting, because I've had every single American person that comes here and actually talks to Chinese people, they're blown away. It's like, man, they're so friendly. The society is great. There's a lot of, I tell you an interesting comment. I did a vlog where I was walking around Chongqing, and I saw this probably about many comments, dozens of comments. It's like, what's most interesting, Cyrus? The society looks really healthy there. Right, like people walking around are healthy. Like he's like, I don't know if you noticed this, but at minute 13:25, there's two girls behind you, giving a high five and giggling because they wanted to be in your video, and they're just it's like I would have never imagined China to be that happy. I kind of had this impression that Chinese people are
heads down,
depressed, and I'm like, Chinese people are happy, man. They're on social media, they're watching movies, they're listening to their favorite songs.
There's a lot of unhappy ones too, just like in any normal society.
Exactly.
You have happy people and unhappy people.
So I just think it's again, my message is just be curious, go explore, and go see for yourself.
Even just extending a little bit about what we were just talking about in terms of societally, how familial everybody is, how important the importance of family is. It's one of those things that I believe that you can hear about it, listen to it, and think, and even repeat. yeah, oh, China is a very family-based society. But you don't really understand what it really means until, like, you have lived here,
Yeah.
talking and being around with locals. You can kind of feel that,
Yeah.
right? And that is, it's very different than just reading about it or hearing about it.
Right.
Because the reason why I'm saying this is because you always go back to the idea of freedom
Yeah.
and individual life versus societal life, like your role in society versus your role for yourself. And people always talk about how those differences in American values and Chinese values are.
Yeah.
And I'm here to say that, yeah, they are different. And that is, you don't understand how different it is, but I know you're promoting similarities, but you have to understand those differences. And because of those differences, if you can understand those, then you will understand why freedom actually is on both sides, and you have happiness on both sides.
100%.
You know what I mean? You have to understand the nuance between both too. And then you can come in a little bit more with your own opinion, right?
I think the key word you said there, Howie, was nuance. And I think that another message I want people to understand is that if you look at China from the American lens, it will never make sense to you.
Exactly.
Much like if you look at America from the Chinese lens, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
And so that's, you only will understand it if you really live here and understand it and feel it. And the simplest example I can say is, in my community in America, very Republican, all love the Second Amendment, all have guns. And they've said, it's like, Cyrus, like, did you ever feel unsafe being in China? Like, I know that government doesn't like to have guns. And I'm like, actually, it's the complete opposite, because there is no guns. I feel extremely safe.
But that's such a wild way to look at it, right?
But that's such a typical American way. Like, if that's a very hardcore Republican way to look at it. Because in their
mind, it's so wild to me. Like, it's wild. You would feel less safe by having no guns.
It's wild because you've been in China a long time, right? But I'm trying to put you into a born and raised in Las Vegas, Republican, loves his guns, and so that their mindset is like guns equal freedom, guns equal, hey, I get to control. Like, the government fears me because because we're armed, right? That's why we have the Second Amendment. So again, like, if you look at it, like, if you tell this to a Chinese person, they're like, that makes absolutely zero sense to me. And I'm like, you're right. I can understand your point, but I also understand why he's saying that, because I understand where he's coming from. That's what I mean. You can't look at, you cannot look at China from an American lens. You can't just say, well, China's not good because people can't vote for their leader. In their mind, like, I don't care what the United States says. All I can see is, like, what's happening to my life right now.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where, you guys have probably heard of that Harvard study where they did this 10-year study, and they just seemed like, go through all of these villages and stuff, and you realize that the Chinese party, the Chinese government is actually genuinely popular amongst the majority of Chinese people. And the caveat to that would be, I think a lot of very ultra wealthy people would not be a big fan of the government. That because in China you can't be this very over the top, gao diao, kind of guy. You have to be di diao, right? You got to be di diao.
Because that's where they crack down the hardest.
That's where they crack down the hardest, right? So,
but I think America could use a little bit of that right now, right?
Well, and that's why you see, like, that like people will ask me, another common question I get is, if China is so great, then why do all these people from China with money, why do they come to the United States? I said, oh, it's very simple. If you've got money, there's no better place in the world to live than the United States, especially for Chinese. If you have a lot of money, you can control the system, right? You can take your kids, you can put them into the best schools, you can live in the best neighborhoods, you can do everything you want to do, and you can get a head start on life. And that's not necessarily true in China, because China, we want to take care of the whole society, right? And there was a really interesting case study where in Shenzhen, there was this amazing teacher, like top 10 teacher in China. And basically the government, what happened was there was a boom of real estate around that school, because everyone's like, hey, we need to get our kids in that school so that they can learn from that teacher, because she was so advanced at whatever she was teaching. It became very famous online. So the government's like, whoa. We don't like seeing that people are moving to that area because they're pricing out others. The real estate started to get up. But of course, everybody with money is like, well, no worries, I can pay for it. But then all of a sudden, the people that can't get in there, they can't get access to that teacher. So what did the Chinese government do? They pulled that teacher out, said, you're now going to teach online so that every student in Shenzhen gets access to you, because we want the society to improve. That's a very Chinese thing. And so again, that's an issue. Like, if you have money, you don't like that, Because why? Because if I have money, I should be able to pay to get ahead.
Well, because your privileges decrease now.
My privileges decrease, right?
Yeah,
but
with
it's that common prosperity, right?
Yeah.
We want everybody. We want the tide to raise all boats, the yachts and the little minnow boats. We want everybody to get up. But so again, you can see the frustration from somebody that's rich, where it's like, I can't. I should be able to pay for privilege.
Yeah. Why am I not getting ahead?
Why am I not getting ahead? Whereas we know in the United States, it's like, hey, you want to get to Harvard, write a check.
Money.
You want to live in the
Money
most
runs the world.
exclusive neighborhood. You want to get to the most exclusive prep school to get you into Harvard. Check.
Pay to play.
Pay to play. And that's how the system works.
But going back to this whole idea of like, you know, the similarities actually between, let's say, China and U.S. in terms of the people and what they actually want at the end of the day is strikingly similar, right? Because we talk about these things and these concepts in China, and it's very similar to things that let's say Bernie Sanders would talk about, right? Obviously, they would never associate that with anything Chinese over there politically. But if you look at Bernie Sanders and the kind of support and popularity he has for his ideas, if you look at the new New York City mayoral candidate, Zoran or whatever,
yes,
the things he's talking about,
right.
A lot of things are strikingly like Chinese, like what they're talking about. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of what we're doing here in many ways.
For sure.
But obviously, you know, they're not going to say that over there, nor are they going to think that. But it's this idea that we're actually, at the end of the day, we're all kind of chasing the same things. And what we get caught up on is we quibble about the processes to get there. And I love what you said is that we can't look at America through a Chinese lens, and we can't look at China through an American lens. And that's so true. The problem with that is we only know what we know.
Yeah.
Right? People only know what they know. And so our lenses are shaped for us by our experiences, and that's just it. And that's the only thing we can look through.
And I think that's why when we talk about your lenses are shaped through your experiences, hence why you need to go travel the world. You have to come here to experience it. And so next summer, we actually have several families from our community that have said, hey, we really want to go to China. Like, we would feel comfortable going with you because we just, the language barrier, just the unfamiliarity, but we're just like, because my wife posts every day on Instagram, you know, the stories, and it's just like, wow, I would have never imagined China was so clean. Can't imagine the food looks like that. Can't imagine the indoor playgrounds for the kids are that clean. And so we're like, yeah, like China again, like you should come experience it. You know, it's going to be very different than what your perceptions are, and you're going to have a great time. And I think it's again, I think there's a lot of these soft power wins. But you know, why is the Zorhan popular in New York City? Is because he's preaching a lot of the things that China has done well, where it's this society. You know, for example, earlier this week. Type 1 diabetes cured, but there was a case where a 25-year-old woman with type 1 diabetes was cured, and by this team of Chinese scientists, and it's great. And then all of a sudden in the U.S., there's an article from Goldman Sachs questions: is curing patients a sustainable business model?
Yeah.
And I mean, and that
paid for by big pharma,
and that to me, it just kind of sums up the United States right now. So I mean, we love our country. There's many great aspects about it, but unfortunately, this ultra capitalist mentality that really you would never see a headline that in China. Like, that would just be so far out. People would be like, what are you talking about? Like, curing diseases benefits the society.
Well, the article you're referring to, what was their argument for why it wouldn't benefit society?
Well, no, the article was, is it a sustainable business model?
Oh, okay.
So it's not, because
not for them.
Yeah, and that's the issue, because I mean, in America, we don't have a healthcare system; we have a healthcare industry.
Yeah,
and that's the difference.
Healthcare business.
It's a business, and that's why I say, America, everything in America is based on it's a business.
So is education.
Yeah, I mean, everything is. So I mean, again, there's many great aspects of the U.S., and I think there's. This is a reason why it's still a very attractive place for many people to come, and there's still great opportunities in America, if you want to come and hustle and work hard. I mean, that American dream is still very much alive. And I think it's harder to chase, but it's that chase that's always there, and so I think people, there's always a hope there. And so I think that, but I do see a lot of the youth in America, though, are becoming much more open to this kind of socialist idea. And they're starting to see some of these benefits from China, where you look at a country with 95% of the people here are covered by basic health care. That's a stark contrast to what we have in the United States. So again, I think that's why I mean, the youth, under the age of 30, you're on TikTok, You're watching videos on China, you're saying, wow, this is very different than what I've been told, and I'm open to it. And so I think that's where I think China is winning in the long term as far as the soft power. Again, I go back to that Alliance of Democracy study with 79% of the world now having a higher opinion of of China over the United States. I think that should be a wake up call. But I mean, it's a tougher reflection. I think when you look at, I know we haven't mentioned Trump at all on this podcast, but I continue to see his actions on the international stage and how it affects our relationship with the world. I have a close friend of mine from Norway, and he had said, Cyrus, no one in our circle is going to the United States. Like, it's like summer holidays are coming. As you know, Europeans all have massive summer breaks, and it's like no one in Scandinavia is even considering going to the
It's
U.S.
like anywhere but.
Anywhere but.
Is that more of a political sentiment, or is it because of like the whole immigration raids going on? Like what?
Oh, it's definitely the tariffs and just Trump. It's just it's 100% that. It's
Like, why go?
It's kind of like a boycott.
It's a boycott.
Okay.
So
I think it's a tough time for many Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, to make heads or tails in terms of what are what's the reality of the consequences or the benefits of any of these moves that are being made, whether we're talking about tariffs, whether we're talking about immigration, whether we're talking about healthcare, whether, any of these political decisions or manufacturing, right? And so you're caught in the middle for most people of what do I believe here? Like, what is the real thing? Because there's so much conflicting information.
Yeah.
And so it's just sad to kind of see people, especially Americans, kind of coping with what is reality for them. And even that word reality is like kind of up in the air, and it's like ambiguous, and no one knows what to really believe. And everyone's aware like that things are like a lot of things are lies and can't be true, and this and that. And I mean, just look at the Epstein files. It's like no one knows. Like, it's just, everyone is just in this world of like skepticism and hesitancy, but like still like hardcore believing in what they believe and picking sides. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
What's it like on the ground for you?
Well, I'm going to bring back another statistic, and I love bringing up these polls and these surveys because I think they really bring a lot of credibility here. But there was a USA Today poll that I'm going to start off with one that said, like, what do Americans feel about interracial marriage? Okay, in 2020, this was last year, 2024. So they said 96% of Americans are accepting of interracial marriage. Like, fantastic.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, right? Like, that's good.
No surprise there.
No surprise. Yeah. I mean, we're very mixed. I mean, very common to see interracial marriage in America now, right? I mean, it's not the 50s and 60s anymore, right? So, I mean, but that just shows you how society has progressed over the last 60, 70 years, right? Whereas, again, 70 years ago, interracial marriage was very taboo. So we're at a point now where 96% of people in America are accepting of interracial marriage. Great. Interparty marriage, both for Republicans, like 70% against, and for Democrats, like 68%. So you basically have a point now in society where for Republicans and Democrats, both sides, almost 70% are like, you can basically marry any type of person you want. They just better be of the same political party. That's the difference maker. And so I think what you have a very divided nation. We are not the United States of America. We are very much divided. And you really fit in it's kind of tough because I think there's three pools, really. You have one that is like your hardcore Republican, your hardcore liberal, or you're kind of stuck in the middle and you don't really like either of them. I'm kind of that third option where I'm just like, gosh, there's aspects I like from both sides of the party, but I can't really say I'm fully on board with either of them. And I think, what's problem is that's another contrast that I see with China, whereas you do have a much more united country. It is a country that is united and moving forward in one direction, which I do think is a much more positive thing because you have that stability with the government. And, it is just so, it's so confusing because, when you have these tariffs and it's, one day the tariffs are on, the next day they're off, then they're back on, then we're doing 90 days, then they're an extension, but now they're off. I mean, it's just, how do you do business? How do you move forward? It becomes very, very complicated. Most companies in the US have said we're not giving guidance this year because it's too confusing. Because literally, if the tariffs come in, then we're going to get hit by this massive thing. It's going to completely screw up our estimates, and then we can't forecast correctly how we're going to do that. So
because every decision becomes a liability now.
Absolutely, and that. So I think you're wanting to make decisions, and I think the other thing is let's just say let's just say that we're all executives at Nike. Okay, we're on the top, we're at the board of Nike, and Donald Trump has said, unless you build factories in America, we're going to tariff you at whatever percentage. So, we can amongst ourselves, we can say, all right, well, what do we do, guys? Should we invest hundreds of millions of dollars and start building factories all up and down the West Coast? I mean, our headquarters is in Portland, so I guess maybe we start there. Let's build a massive, $100 million Nike factory to build shoes here in America. We can say that, but we also know this is that by the time we get the permitting done, get all of the logistics done for that, it's probably going to be about two years. So by that time, Trump's probably going to be done, right? And we know these policies will get reversed. So you kind of have to play this game where it's just like, I give it a great example. I think Apple. They said, what we're going to do? We're going to manufacture all of the U.S. iPhones in India.
Yeah.
Right? So you have this big announcement. And basically, Trump can now say that, hey, look at this, guys. Making America great again. I don't know how, because, India, last time I checked, India is not America. It's not like we're manufacturing those in the United States. But it's a win for Trump. He can say it's a win. Now, for Apple, they can just say that and just say, okay, we're going to look into it. But think about the logistics of actually building factories there, doing that. And then all of a sudden, we know the quality in India is nowhere near what it is in China, hence why they haven't already gone there. And so then now there's all these reports that all of these things are falling through. But it's kind of like we can basically commit to this on paper. So even Nike, let's just say we're like, you know what we're going to do? Let's just go ahead and announce it. Let's just say, look, we're going to build a new factory. It's going to open up by 2032. It's going to be amazing. Make America great again. And then we can maybe put together a plan and maybe do some research on this. But we kind of know deep down inside, within a few years, Trump's going to be gone. This policy is going to be reversed.
Yeah, we drag our feet a little bit.
We're just dragging our feet. We're just dragging our feet. And that's the issue is like we're actually slowing down business, right? And we're actually affecting Nike's ability to make the best shoes in the world and actually operate as a successful company. Let's be honest. Do Americans going to want to work in a Portland factory putting shoes together? Americans don't want to do that job. Even Chinese don't want to do that job anymore. That's
exactly
that's the issue. Is even in China, China is not the cheap place to manufacture anymore. That's the issue. The other thing is that there was an amazing tweet that went viral, and I saved it, but it was basically this American entrepreneur. What he does is he manufactures shower heads. And he said, we manufacture our shower heads. We have a big website, tons of traffic. We get a lot of people ordering directly from our website. Here's the interesting case study. I manufacture my products in China. We sell them for high-end shower head, $59.99. Okay, boom. There's our cost on our website. So what I did is I went out and I found a local American manufacturer. We got the U.S. steel, proudly made in the U.S. Boom, boom, boom. By the time we had in all the costs and everything, my sale price is going to be around $119. So massive price difference. What we did is we did an A/B test. Okay, so we launched this massive sale. We said, guys, guess what? We've got big holiday sale coming up. I think it was Memorial Day. We got Memorial Day sale. Get these amazing shower heads. Now, they've got a big established customer base already. So they put it out there and they said, look, you guys know we manufacture in China, but guess what? We got the USA made. Got the eagle on there, American flag, USA steel, woohoo! All USA made. We sold 5,375 shower heads over the weekend. Guess how many consumers bought the American version? Out of 5,375.
Like 5. No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
I don't know, 15, 20, I don't know.
0. Not a single sale. and not a single sale. And so that was an incredible piece of data because basically said everybody wants to buy in America until it comes down to the price point.
Yeah, of course.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
So you can be as patriot and the difference is that if it was probably $10 more, hey, this one made in China is $59.99. And guess what? Our USA steel one is $69.99. I guarantee you it would have been a lot more.
It would have been closer.
It'd have been closer.
Yeah,
It'd have been closer. Maybe even 1,000, maybe 2. I don't know. Maybe it would have been 50-50. Maybe it would have been more American. It would have been closer. But when the price point is so ridiculous, which
double the price,
it just has to be. And the other thing is that the quality is the same. So it's not like you're buying inferior products from China. It's like, geez, this thing is as good as the other one. It's just this one's made in America. People sometimes get a little bit too nostalgic. Like, wouldn't it be great though? Like back in the day, we had all these factories and everyone's working here. Like, we should just make everything here. Like our refrigerators, our microwaves, our everything. We should rely on nobody. I'm like, why are we going back to the 1900s? The 1800s. Where you have to make everything on yourself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I'm sure I would imagine you would agree with this, is that there is also legitimately a national security issue with America and the way it's set up right now in terms of they can't even their own defense industry, which is like the golden like child of like American things. So it's like the military budget and like the military industry and defense budget and all that stuff. Even then, they're heavily reliant on Chinese materials.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like that. I mean, just from an American view, like that is a huge elephant in the room and a huge problem that they need to address, I guess, somehow.
Yeah.
But what I think the problem is there's trying like this broad sword of almost everything with things that don't even make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Cyrus, thank you so much for coming here.
What a chat today, gentlemen. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I always enjoy. Third time on the podcast. Yep. What an amazing time. Thank you so much. It's always really, really fun. I remember I was so excited to come to your studio in 2023 because it was my first time being back to China after COVID.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And it was so much fun because I literally I think you contacted me really, I think it was like
last minute.
48 hours, 24 hours.
That's right. That's right.
And then it was just, I was literally like, I just arrived in China. Like I can literally take a taxi there right now.
Yeah.
So I was like, jet lagged and whatever.
Yeah.
I just like literally right off the plane. And then we did this one. So it's just been great. So I just love to see the podcast continue to grow and you guys do a great job. So
yeah, we have a knack of getting guests that come straight from the airport or go straight to the airport after recording. We have a knack of doing that.
That's perfect.
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I don't know what that says. But Cyrus, once again, man, thank you so much for taking the time. Always wonderful talking to you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man.
Keep on trucking,
Appreciate
man.
you guys. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate you.
All right, that was Cyrus. I'm Justin.
I'm Howie.
Be good. Be well.
Peace.